Biomed Nexus Daily Updates, your essential biotech, medtech, and pharma recap. No noise, just what matters. TLDR, the House Select Committee on China opened an investigation into the China clinical trials of Merck, AbbVie, Lilly, Pfizer, and BMS. All five have until July 17th to explain their data protection, ethics, and oversight at sites in Xinjiang and at Chinese military hospitals. Nobody is accused of breaking the law. BridgeBio landed 1B in preferred equity from 6th Street and KKR, one of the largest non-dilutive raises of the year. OrcaBio priced its new cell therapy Trexi at a $48,000 list price. It is a regulatory T-cell therapy for blood cancer patients heading into transplant. The FDA expanded Vertex and CRISPR's Casgevy into younger children under the CNPV program, widening access for the sickle cell gene therapy. Nature retracted a high-profile study that tied lung cancer survival to the timing of PD-1 treatment. That is 2 pivotal retractions in 2 days after yesterday's Tavneos news. Executive takeaway back on June 3rd, when Pfizer and Lilly both signed China deals on the same day. We wrote that the political rhetoric said decouple while the deal flow said accelerate, and that the two could not run in opposite directions forever. This week, the gap started to close. The House Select Committee on China sent letters to the CEOs of the 5 biggest U.S. pharma companies demanding details on the hundreds of clinical trials they run in China, with particular focus on sites in Xinjiang and at hospitals tied to the Chinese military. The committee was careful to say there is no evidence of wrongdoing, but the framing is unmistakable. Chairman John Moulinar called China the cheapest and fastest place in the world to run early trials and questioned whether that speed is exposing American IP and aiding China's military biotech ambitions. Here is why this matters more than a typical Washington letter. It arrives alongside the Biotech Investment National Security Act, which would put U.S. licensing deals with Chinese firms under Treasury review and which explicitly names the Pfizer and BMS China deals as the kind it wants to stop. For the past 6 months, the smart money has treated the COINS Act and its successors as noise that would never catch up to the deal flow. That assumption is now being tested. If you run BD at a large pharma, the China licensing playbook that produced 138B in deals last year just got a new variable that is not going away before the midterms. The deals already signed are safe. The next ones now carry political risk that has to be priced in. The market, for what it is worth, mostly shrugged. Lilly slipped 5% and AbbVie eased about 1% on the news, then both largely stabilized. And that tells you investors see this as a slow-building overhang, not an immediate threat. We think that read is right for now, but the direction of travel is clear. And this is the strongest signal yet that the China pipeline the whole industry leaned on is going to get more complicated, not less. Read full analysis. Policy Washington put the industry's China pipeline under the microscope, and this time it named names: MRK, ABBV, LLY, PFE, BMY. The House Select Committee on China opened a national security investigation into the China clinical trials of the 5 largest U.S. drug makers. Chairman John Moulinar sent letters to Merck and AbbVie on June 29th, then to Lilly, Pfizer and BMS within days, giving all 5 until July 17th to respond. The committee wants details on due diligence, data protection, and IP safeguards, especially at trial sites in the Xinjiang region and at hospitals affiliated with China's military. The numbers it cited are specific. Merck has run 224 studies in China since 2005, including 40 at military-tied sites. Pfizer has run at least 43 at military medical centers. The letters stop short of alleging any wrongdoing. Merck said patient safety and ethical integrity remain central to its research, and the Chinese embassy dismissed the probe as having nothing credible in it. Watch July 17th and watch whether this feeds momentum for the Biotech Investment National Security Act, which would route China licensing deals through Treasury review. Capital markets BridgeBio pulled in $1 billion without selling a single new share. BridgeBio secured 1Bs in preferred equity from 6th Street Partners and KKR, one of the largest non-dilutive financings of the year. The raise gives BridgeBio deep capital to push its rare disease and cardiology franchises, led by Attruby in ATTR cardiomyopathy, without diluting existing shareholders. It is also a signal about the financing environment. 40 private biotechs disclosed rounds of 100 mints or more in the first half of 2026, and big structured deals like this one show that capital is flowing to companies with commercial or near-commercial assets. The money is there right now for the right story. Cell therapy Orca Bio put a $4,800 price on its new blood cancer cell therapy. Orca Bio set a $48,000 list price for Trexi, a regulatory T-cell therapy for blood cancer patients undergoing stem cell transplant. The pricing lands the drug in the same broad range as other one-time cell therapies and reflects the manufacturing complexity of engineered T-cell products. The launch adds a new tool for reducing transplant complications like graft versus host disease, and it is another sign that the cell therapy field is steadily moving from novelty to standard of care, with pricing to match. Gene therapy Casgevy just reached younger kids using the FDA's priority voucher program to get there. VRTX. CRSP, the FDA expanded Vertex and CRISPR's Casgevy into a younger pediatric population for sickle cell disease, broadening it beyond the 12 and up group it was first cleared for. Notably, the expansion came through the CNPV program, the priority voucher pathway we have tracked since it approved Foundayo in 50 days. Casgevy is the first CRISPR-based medicine on the market, and reaching younger patients matters because earlier intervention can prevent the irreversible organ damage sickle cell causes over time. It is also a reminder that CNPV, whatever its transparency issues, keeps pulling meaningful approvals forward. Research integrity. 2 pivotal retractions in 2 days is a pattern worth noting. Nature retracted a widely cited study that linked lung cancer survival to the timing of PD-1 treatment, according to Fierce Pharma. On its own, it is one paper, coming one day after a top journal retracted the pivotal study behind Amgen's Tavneos. It points to something bigger. The evidence base underneath some marketed and widely used approaches is getting a harder second look. For anyone relying on published data to guide strategy or prescribing, the lesson of this week is that peer review is not the final word, and post-publication scrutiny is now a real force. The week in review. Monday, Ipsen and Zymeworks both struck deals, showing the M&A wave has spread past Big Pharma. FDA set a surprise AdCom for Capricor's Duchenne therapy. Viridian's Lumvoa won approval in thyroid eye disease. Tuesday, the Medicare GLP-1 bridge launched, opening the obesity market's access era. The TED race added a third player as Roche's Enspring got priority review. Abivax clawed back its June crash. Wednesday, a top journal retracted the pivotal Tavneos study, escalating Amgen's regulatory mess. B1's Brukinsa won in frontline mantle cell lymphoma. Layoffs slowed and H1 closed with 52 M&A deals. Read Full Analysis, Biomed, Nexus Pro, Institutional Intelligence Brief. The China pipeline gets a political price tag. We have tracked the China licensing wave all year, from BMS and Hengrui's $15, 2B deal in May through Pfizer and Innovant's $10, 5B in June, and we flagged repeatedly that the political counterweight was building even as the deals piled up. This week, the counterweight got specific. Here is how we would think about the exposure. The deals already signed are safe. Nothing in the committee's letters or the pending Biotech Investment National Security Act unwinds an existing agreement. The risk is entirely forward-looking. It falls on the next wave of licensing deals and on trials still being placed in China. 3 tiers of exposure. Most exposed are companies with heavy trial footprints at military-affiliated or Xinjiang sites, since those are the committee's explicit focus. Merck, with 224 China studies and 40 at military-tied sites, and Pfizer, with at least 43 at military centers, are squarely in that group. Moderately exposed to companies with large China licensing deals but cleaner trial geographies. Least exposed to companies that have stayed out of China sourcing entirely, a group that until now looked like it was missing out and may soon look prudent. What BD teams should do? Price political risk into the next China deal the way you already price clinical and regulatory risk. Map your own trial sites against the committee's criteria before a letter arrives, not after. And build the case now for why a given Chinese asset is worth the added scrutiny, because it is cheaper and faster, is exactly the rationale the committee is attacking. The 138B that flowed into Chinese licensing last year was underwritten on an assumption of frictionless access. That assumption no longer holds. The base case is still that the deal flow continues because the science and the economics are too compelling to abandon and because Congress moves slowly. But the risk premium on China sourcing just went up, and it is not coming back down soon. Cell therapy pricing. Where Treg-Z fits Orca Bio's $40,000 to $8,000 list price for Treg-Z is worth watching because it helps set the band for the next generation of engineered cell therapies. It sits below the headline 7-figure prices of some one-time gene therapies, but well above conventional biologics in the range the market has come to accept for personalized cell products. The strategic question for the field is durability of value. Treg-Z is a regulatory T-cell therapy aimed at reducing transplant complications like graft versus host disease. If it meaningfully cuts those complications, the price is defensible on total cost of care grounds because transplant complications are enormously expensive to manage. Payers increasingly evaluate cell therapies on that basis rather than on sticker price alone. For the wave of cell therapies coming behind it, Treg-Z is a useful reference point. It signals that the market will support pricing in the mid-6 figures for products that solve a clear clinical problem in a defined population without needing to reach the 7-figure ceiling that draws political attention. BridgeBio's financing. Blueprint, BridgeBio's 1B preferred equity raise from 6th Street, and KKR is a template more commercial stage biotechs will study. Rather than issue common stock and dilute shareholders at a moment when it has a launched product gaining traction, BridgeBio tapped structured capital that sits above common equity but does not flood the share count. This works when a company has a real commercial asset to underwrite against, in this case, AbbVie in ATTR cardiomyopathy. It does not work for a preclinical company with no revenue line. That is the dividing line in this financing environment. Companies with commercial or near-commercial assets have access to deep, creative, founder-friendly capital, while earlier stage names still face dilutive rounds or the IPO gauntlet. With 40 private biotechs raising $100 million or more in the first half, and structured deals like this one available to the commercial tier, the capital picture is genuinely healthy for companies that have de-risked their lead asset. The financing drought is over for that group. It is not over for everyone. Thursday, Congress opened the China trials probe. BridgeBio raised 1B. Orca Bio priced Treg-Z. Casgevy expanded into younger children. Catalyst calendar date, event tickers, July 17 Pharma responses due to House China trials. Probe MRK, ABBV, LLY, PFE, BMY July, 31 Section 232 Pharma tariffs. Effective, large companies, multiple August 2026 Replimune RP1 FDA response, Repl August 22 Capricorn, Diramio-cel PDUFA, AdCom pending, Caprimminent Revolution Medicines, CNPV filing RVM Diminent Lilly, Foundayo T2D filing under CNPV LLY Q3, 2026 Revolution, Deraxon Resib approval projected, Truist, RVMD Q3, 2026 Unicure, Huntington's gene therapy under review Q3, 2026 Regan XBEO, Duchenne gene therapy, BLA filing RGNX Q3, 2026 Teva, Emalex, close expected Teva Q3, 2026 GSK, Nuvalent, close expected GSK Q3, 2026 ABB, Apogee, close expected ABB Q3, 2026 Merck, KGaA Biotechne, close expected MKKGY 2026 Didasamtinib and Neladalkib, PDUF ACE, ROS1, ALK GSK and UVLH2, 2026 Merck, SACTMT global filing, expected MRKH2 2026 Foundayo, T2D regulatory action expected LOY-H2 2026 Ajax registrational trial, initiation expected LOY 2026 Triumph-H2 and Triumph-A3 readouts, Rete True Tide, LLY-SEPT19 Ultragenics, UX1111, PDUFA Sanfilippo Type A, Raricept 29 Section 232 Pharma tariffs, effective all others, multiple DEC 2026 Mineralist Lorandrostat, PDU FAM-LIS 2027 Reta True Tide, launch anticipated, BMO LEDEC, 7 Lilly Investment Community Meeting LLY, visit the ProHub read full article, is your company listed in the Biomed Nexus directory? 21.04 companies across 14 categories, claim or upgrade your listing. Sponsorship slots for 2026 are limited, see packages and pricing. New Biomed Nexus signals, weekly sales intelligence for life sciences BD teams, learn more.